I'm a Black American, and I know for a fact that my ancestors came from West Africa. It's sad to see how much hate Africa gets. So why are you calling yourself Black American and not African American, or just West African, first and foremost? Second of all, claiming where you're actually from, where your lineage is from, and where you were born doesn't mean that you hate anything or anybody. That's like me being born in Brooklyn, New York, and someone saying, no, you're originally from California because of the stories that I heard from 500 years ago.
We both have been sold marketing propaganda that's out of our control. Black Americans have been portrayed a certain way to the African community. The African community has been portrayed a certain way to the Black American community.
Africans who don't want to be African. Yeah, that is not a problem just amongst Black Americans. It is a problem for Black people in Africa itself who have been brutalized and colonized, and they too don't really want to be African.
I'm a Black American, and I know for a fact that my ancestors came from West Africa. It's sad to see how much hate Africa gets. So why are you calling yourself Black American and not African American, or just West African, first and foremost? Second of all, claiming where you're actually from, where your lineage is from, and where you were born doesn't mean that you hate anything or anybody. That's like me being born in Brooklyn, New York, and someone saying, no, you're originally from California because of the stories that I heard from 500 years ago. The white people that absolutely hates our guts, that oppressed us, that redlined us, that raped us, that ate us, that stole from us, that lied to us. We see them in videos lying on us clear as day. You really think they're going to give you a clear depiction of what history actually is? Okay. And people saying, no, you're not from Brooklyn, you're from California. You from Inglewood. Like, huh? The indigenous people in Sentinel Island, they're jet black. They've never been colonized. Indigenous people all over the world were deeply melanated, first and foremost. Second of all, they're super, super dark. People can't even get on that island because they go in the war. They killing them dead as soon as they try to set foot on that island. Now, if they were to be colonized by fake clear folk missionaries, do you think that those clear folk will go over there and tell them people that they African when they've been over there for we don't even know how long? Because you can't even really study those people like that. But that's their homeland. That's where they're from. Or what about the Pacific Islanders? Pacific Islanders look a lot like us. A lot. The people from Fiji, the indigenous folk over there look a lot like Black Americans. Like, now, are they forced to call themselves African Phoenician? Do y'all go to Jamaica and say you're African Jamaican? Do y'all go to Barbados and say you're African Barbados? I don't even know how you say it. Was it Bajan? Y'all don't do that to anybody but Black Americans. It's very ironic. And then to say that it's hate, because literally I'm saying all of my ancestors, I knew my great-great-grandmother, she's never told me anything about coming from Africa. All of the stories she told me, they all was in the South, originated from the South. Her mother from the South, their mother from the South. Nobody was ever got off a boat, dated. And wouldn't there be some type of folklore, some type of proverbs that even the Africans, the West Africans will be passing down, warning their children of the white man that comes on a boat and kidnaps them by the millions? How come we ain't never read no story about that from the Africans or heard no proverbs about that from the Africans? Believe what you want to believe. You said you know, so I'm going to guess that you've done your genealogy the right way, which is through the paper trail, like going to the Library of Congress, looking up birth certificates and death certificates. Now, if you've done that and you've traced your lineage back to West Africa, kudos to you. Claim who you are, rep your set, but don't be manipulative. Don't try to gaslight and emotionally manipulate other people because they don't identify the same as you. That's okay. We can all be different. Black people were all over the world at one point. Spread love is the Brooklyn way.
Okay, I'm the advisor for a group of African students. And the thing about it is, I hope that they learn from me just as I'm learning from them. Me being Black American and them being, actually born and from Africa. Me being much older, there's some things that I know and have seen that they have yet to see because they're still young. But I think, just my personal opinion, the biggest cause, one of the reasons for the cause of the differences between Black Americans and, people from Africa is the fact that number one, we never controlled our own history. How our history is taught, when it's shared, we never control that. That's been a huge factor, because me taking it upon myself to I like to learn about Africa. I like to learn about Black American history as well, because the two are connected. But we don't have control of our own history. We're always relying on it to be fed to us because it was snatched from us, especially Black Americans. I like to learn about Africa. I like to learn about Black American history as well, because the two are connected. But we don't have control of our own history. We're always relying on it to be fed to us because it was snatched from us, especially Black Americans. The second thing is, most of the issues is based on the fact that we both have been sold marketing propaganda that's out of our control. Black Americans have been portrayed a certain way to the African community. The African community has been portrayed a certain way to the Black American community. So you have to actually get away from the media and the marketing to really learn about each community yourself. You have to. You can't do it watching TV. You can't do it watching movies, because both sides, we're both portrayed in a negative way. And for some reason, we see what we see on TV and adopt that as, oh, that's all Africa. Like over here, when they show the TV commercials of, kids with flies and stuff all over on, oh, please feed them. That's what they show us that Africa is. And then even, I'm not sure what they show in Africa. Now, I've been to Africa, but that was during my military days, so I didn't get a chance to really explore. But the thing about it is, showing that Black Americans are gangsters and shooters and all this type stuff, and it's so far from the truth of what each one is. And the other thing is, at a certain point, you have to start actually interacting with each other. Not assuming, but just, we got to start interacting with each other on a more, I don't care. I mean, you can do Zoom meetings, whatever, but it needs to be something where you're interacting with someone from Africa, from America, to sort of understand. Because there's just so much to unpack. Will it happen overnight? Will things be different overnight? No. But it's a starting point. Keeping it short.
Black people, it is said, a friend who frowns is better than an enemy who smiles. Yeah? A friend who frowns is better than an enemy who smiles. Yeah? Black Americans who are really Africans, who don't want to be African. Yeah, that is not a problem just amongst Black Americans. It is a problem for Black people in Africa itself, who have been brutalized and colonized, and they too don't really want to be African. Yeah? It is the same thing in the Caribbean. We have suffered under so-called white supremacy. All of us, this oppression, it has messed with us. So, recently, this whole us versus them approach that is coming from Black America, or you guys are saying that some, upon discussions with some of the content creators, I had a discussion with Adonis, and he was saying, like they don't want to get involved.
African culture is its own separate unity thing. It's its own thing.
Then I'll fight that. No. What's good for Africa is good for Black America. Seriously. That is a fact. That is the reason why Malcolm X went and got involved with Kwame Nkrumah and a lot of the African leaders. They were involved. It was straight after that they unalived him. They said, nah, this guy's doing too much. They unalived him because they saw that the two now are united. And we were all fighting this global white supremacy and neocolonialism. Observe the 60s. You see the evidence there. What Lumumba stood for helped Black America. What Kwame Nkrumah stood for helped Black America. That's how you got to see it. Capitalism is not a system for us to uphold as a people. It is sickness. It's the residue of slavery, capitalism. So you cannot be black and a capitalist. It doesn't work. But we love this system. Most of us in the diaspora love this system. The standard of progress to Africans, black people worldwide, is how close or how similar we are to the West. Because that is the standard of progress. That's how we measure progress and development. That is sickness. Africans should not be trying to emulate the West. You will always be doing a catch-up if you're trying to emulate the West. You will always be doing catch-up because when you reach where they are, they're 30, 40 years. You can't beat the original. We have to set our own standard of progress and our own standards of success. Mark our own way. Mark our own standards and straight towards it. It's going to get to a point where if African Americans do not stand up, especially the educated amongst them, to put all of this to bed, and African Americans become really isolated, thinking that they're in that system of USA, they don't really have a black house. There's only a white house. Deep what I'm saying? Yeah. Then what's the point of you talking about 500 years? Because look, it is a fact that when Europeans came, they literally projected and put upon us the feudalistic and warring ways or behavior that they had in Europe upon us. Yeah. So now the Britain is fighting the Dutch and the Dutch is fighting the France. Yeah. That was what was happening. That was what was causing the wars during the slave trade. Because the Dutch wanted to usurp the Portuguese. So in Ghana, there was wars due to this, because certain towns were working with the Portuguese and certain towns were working with the Dutch. I don't know where to take this, seriously, because I got so much things in my head. I just project all of this stuff out there, hoping that, like we will really deep what's really going on. Look, I tell you a fact, a truth. In order for the world to be what it is, that is the whole world, it is instrumental that African people, black people, remain where they are. It is important for Africa to not work for its own interest, because Africa is bang in the middle of the world. You can't have world trade if Africa has full autonomy and is in control of its resources and its territories. So it's instrumental to keep us divided. Look at the world trade. Look at trade, Gulf of Aden, Suez Canal, Strait of Gibraltar. Then look at the fact that the world needs resources. Then you see why it's instrumental for black people to be divided and for the diaspora, despite being from Africa, not having access to the resources, and other people who are not from Africa have more play and more position in Africa than the diasporans. How does that make sense to you as a black person in this world? Ask yourself this question. How can somebody be able to just come willy-nilly into Africa anyhow and just get resources? Think to yourself, ask yourself this question. We think that it's impossible for us to be united. That's nonsense. New Zealand, Australia work with Britain and work with USA and work with all of the Western world to push one agenda.